Namaste, friends. I hope you are in the best of your spirits as always and consistently preparing for your upcoming exam. Like all the other videos of this series, let us take 10 questions and learn little more of the system of governance in India, which you are all aspiring to become a part of very soon. It will be beneficial if you keep your copy of the Constitution of India close for reference as we move along. I also recommend you please pause the video as the question is displayed on the screen. Answer the question yourself and only then proceed to listen. That's how we can make the best use of it. And continuing from from all the videos that we had earlier, on the right hand side again I've got some random learning points for you. This video you will see the pictures of some personalities who have been awarded the Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award of India. Your task is to identify who these personalities are while you listen to the explanation. Lastly, there is some additional learning at the end of this video also, like always, random but yet relevant for our studies and life. So I strongly suggest to complete the video. Even if you wish to skip some part of my talk here, do watch it till the end by skipping, or much better option of increasing the speed, but go till the end. Alright, so let us take the first question in this video, and that is, recently the term wolf warrior diplomacy has gained currency, and it is in reference to the new diplomatic style of the officials of, a decent guess would also tell you it is China. And this phrase, is to match with their aggressive style, the wolves, the warrior, the aggressive style of the Chinese officials. It's a phrase that is now used widely in the Chinese state-run media as well, and also the Western publications. So it's like, it's a new pattern where you see that instead of long, verbose statements, these Chinese officials are taking to Twitter and other social media platforms to hit back directly at any criticism of China or the criticism of the ruling Communist Party, right? Wolf Warrior, by the way, is the title of a hugely successful series of patriotic action films in China. It features Rambo-like protagonists who fight enemies at home and abroad to defend Chinese interests. So it's actually coming from that background. Anyway, I am decently sure that you would not have recognized this gentleman on the right hand side, Dr. Bhagwan Das, Bharat Ratna. Read what I've written here. Read a bit more about him on Google as well. I'm sure you'll find it very interesting to know. Okay, so the next question we have here is, which of the following statements are correct regarding the elections to the Rajya Sabha? Very, very important question. Over the last 1 year, a lot of events have taken place. So let us see one by one these statements. Only the elected members of concerned legislative assembly can vote in such elections. Absolutely correct. Just the elected members will vote. See, always understand the spirit behind the house or behind that post. For example, president ultimately being a republic, the president of India will be elected by the people. Hence, only the elected representatives vote, right? Elected members of the houses. They may be directly elected, they may be indirectly elected, but they must be elected by the people. Similarly, what is Rajya Sabha ultimately? Rajya Sabha is the representation of the state's interest, and state comprises again of the people. So the principle, that's why, is that the MLAs send their representatives to the Rajya Sabha. So the MLAs who are elected by the people of the particular state, right? Then second statement says, a person who is elected to the Rajya Sabha through a by-poll serves only the remainder of the British system. This is kind of very obvious. This happens even in Lok Sabha, even at the level of panchayats, etc., that any kind of vacancy here is always filled up for the rest of the term. Okay, then there is no option of nota in the voters of for the voters of such election. Absolutely correct. So this in fact came as an issue a couple of years ago when the Election Commission had mentioned that there will be nota, and then ultimately Supreme Court overturned and said there will be no such option called nota, because it's not the freedom of the members of the assemblies. They actually represent a political party. It is a proportional representation system, which ultimately is representing the party really. So when a citizen votes, then they need that freedom. Here that freedom is not required. This was the argument given, and nota has been decided not to be there in the Rajya Sabha election. And it is an open ballot system. I hope we all know that. And what is open ballot? It's just that one member of the concerned party gets to see the ballot. That's all. It's not that everybody gets to see it. And if somebody cross votes, again, it will not attract any disqualification under the anti-defection law. However, the party is free to take any kind of action against the member. That is always the case. They can take action for nothing also. So I hope a lot of you got this right, and let's see. Oh no, again less than 1/3 got it right. Well, now this again, I again and again I don't like to emphasize the same point, but see, unless we have that kind of clarity on very basic terms, it becomes difficult because anybody can confuse you. So at least now you know better. So next question is, who among the following shall be regarded as the guardian of the fundamental rights of citizens of India? A decently straightforward question. I hope there was no extraordinary confusion regarding, let's say, Parliament. Of course, it will not be there. President of India also is highly doubtful. Perhaps some doubt may have been there in Supreme Court and Constitution of India, because ultimately fundamental rights are guaranteed in the Constitution, but the guarantee is given under the custody of Supreme Court of India, right? So who has been made the guardian, right? Who is supposed to protect in case my citizen is being harassed or the child is getting affected? So the guardian there is the Supreme Court of India. They are made responsible for this, right? So should not have been that difficult, and very nice, 83% of you got it correct. So we can move on to the next question. Read about Bidhan Chandra Roy. He was the Chief Minister of West Bengal, and a lot of contribution he had during the freedom struggle, as well as some of his ideas you can read quickly online. Moving on, we have, which of the following statements is or are not a difference between the positions of Vice President of India and Vice President of USA? In case of a vacancy in the office of the President, Vice President of USA takes over the presidency. Absolutely correct. Whereas the Vice President of India does not. This is also correct. We know that the Vice President of India is only a temporary fix. The Vice President acts as the President until the next candidate has been elected. Whereas in USA, the Vice President becomes the next President, right? We know that there is no election as such in between the term of the presidency there. Okay, second statement says the Vice President of USA presides over the joint sittings of the US Congress, while the Vice President of India does not do so for joint sittings of the Parliament of India. Well, we know about the Vice President of India. Yes, this is correct that the Vice President will not preside over the joint sittings. It is presided by the Speaker. If the Speaker is not there, then the Deputy Speaker. If the Deputy Speaker is not there, then the Deputy Chairman. Whereas in USA also it is correct, but you need to understand one thing, that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, which is their Lok Sabha, usually presides over the joint sessions and all the joint meetings that happen. However, the President of the Senate, who's the President of the Senate? The Vice President, right? The way we say Chairman, they are called the President of Senate there. The Vice President, which is the President of the Senate, presides over the joint session in one situation where the electoral votes are counted. This is required by the Constitution. Where the electoral votes are counted, that session the Vice President of USA will preside over. Anyway, this general statement is incorrect that Vice President presides over joint session. This is not correct. So, because the question is asking which is not correct, 2 is your correct answer here. And I would recommend you to read about P.D. Tandon Sahab a little bit more on Google. I really don't want to spend time discussing it here. Well, see, again the performance, 1/4 of you got right. This is again ABCD of essential characteristics differences. So let's go to the next question. The Industrial Relations Code 2019, which has been presented just last year, amalgamates, simplifies and rationalizes the provisions of which of the following enactments? Well, we know the answer is first 3 here, but important thing is to understand about how the labor laws have been rationalized since some time now. So I hope you know that labor as a subject, it falls under the concurrent list of the Constitution. Therefore, both Parliament and state legislature can make laws regarding the regulation of labor. Currently, there are over 100 state laws and about about 40 odd central laws regulating various aspects of labor, such as, resolution of industrial disputes, working conditions, social security, wages, whatever. Now, the second National Commission on Labor, National Commission on Labor in 2002 had found that the existing legislation is very complex, archaic, and inconsistent definitions are there. So, to improve the ease of compliance and to ensure uniformity in the labor laws, the National Commission recommended that all the existing labor laws, they should be consolidated in broad groups, right? In broad groups such as one which they said is industrial relations, and that is what this code is about. So that is one of the groups they had recommended, industrial relations. Then they had recommended another group like wages or social security, then safety, welfare and working conditions. These kind of 4-5 areas in which the recommendation was. So in the first category here, industrial relation, we have got a code, and it replaces these three important acts. So as time will progress, you will see more and more amendments here. Anyway, so we move on to the next question, and that is, why was 15th August chosen as the date for declaring independence of India from British rule? Such a basic question. And I would open up a challenge, take 5 seconds and tell me how many people on the channel would have got this question right. And this is not even polity, it's not even really history, it's just knowing your own country, that what was 15th August. Anyway, I really don't want to discuss this question because I really struggled a lot in making 3 stupid options, 3 options to confuse you, and I was successful to confuse half of you, right? And that's a great achievement of mine and a failure of yours as a group. Let's get better, okay? These are not things which are to be taught in the classroom to youth of India and the adult population and the demographic dividend, we say. But I'm really happy that 52% got it right, but it's not enough here. It's not enough. We have to have a better nation, and it's all in your hands. Something is missing somewhere. All right, that's Mr. K. Kamaraj. I'm sure you have heard about the Kamaraj plan, and he was one of the first what you call kingmakers in Congress, so very popular that way. He was awarded the Bharat Ratna. Okay, so let's go to the next question. 456 is done. It was the Japan's surrender. Actually, Mountbatten had not decided any date because actually the original plan was to grant independence in 1948. But because of the situations that were getting out of control, Mountbatten and everybody in India also realized that the sooner the better. So when they say that, it's a popular dialogue, when I am forgetting who said this, that if we delay the division of power or the grant of power to the 2 new states, there will be no power left to divide. So it's better to do it now. And so he just chose a date which came to his mind, and that was 15th August. And why it came to his mind, when people asked him later, he said that because this is the day Japan surrendered 2 years ago. Okay, anyway, next question we have. The government of India has recently announced expansion of the National Cadet Corps. Which of the following statements are correct regarding the NCC? This was the announcement in the speech by the Prime Minister on 15th August this year, just 2 days back. So let's see, it functions at the national level under the Ministry of Defence. Absolutely correct. It is a statutory organization. This is also correct. It is a tri-service organization comprising the Army, Navy and Air Wing. Absolutely correct. These 3 are the correct statements. Duty and discipline is its motto. No, it's unity and discipline. So that's the motto of this organization. Now see, at the national level it is under Ministry of Defence, but at the state level you will see it is the Ministry of Education that handles the working of the NCC. They get also involved. You can understand why. It's a statutory organization. Yes, you should know that there is a National Cadet Corps Act of the year 1948. And rest of the things I've already told you. So let's move on to the, oh my god, look at that performance here. Well, do prepare. These are, and I'm sure a lot of you must have been in NCC. I believe more than 17%. So let's go to the next question, and that is Sharda Act. 1929 has been in the news lately. What was or were the main objectives of this act? Now, why was this in news? Again, because of the Prime Minister's speech, which has brought to the attention about the committee that is already working since around May and June this year, looking at the age for marriages of boys and girls in India. So the Sarda Act, I mean the name, it's not Sarda Act actually, the name of the act is Child Marriage Restraint Act. Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929. Now the promoter of this act, this law, was Harbilas Sarda. Okay, Harbilas Sarda. And because of that it became popular to be called as Sarda Act, but actually it's called Child Marriage Restraint Act. Okay, so this had fixed the marriageable age for girls at 14 and for the boys at 18, which was later changed, and that is what we have even today. It was changed to 18 and 21. However, this act has now been repealed. It has been repealed by the Prohibition of Child Marriages Act 2006. Okay, and in that act it is now 18 and 21. We have a question on this act also, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, in the next video itself. Just 2 days ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had announced that the government is considering to make the age same for both boys and girls at 21. Interestingly, you should know that the Law Commission had earlier recommended it to be 18 for both. So the Law Commission had recommended that make it 18 for both, while the committee which the government is considering has recommended to make it 21 for both. You know, see, one of the arguments is that this whole differential age, criteria, it just supports, it just propagates even more the stereotypes that we have. And I think there are two stereotypes which they also talk about in their reports. One, they say that women are more mature than men of the same age. I don't know how many men would agree to this, though I do see a lot of women agree to this a lot of times, that at the same age, women are more mature. Well, you think. I don't know what your experiences are. Then the second stereotype which is there is that the wife should be younger than the husband. Right? It's not always true, but the stereotype, this is what people expect. Again, see in your own immediate and extended family if that stereotype holds true, and then see your own thoughts on the matter. Anyhow, that's Professor C.N.R. Rao. I'm sure you have heard of his name. If not, go and read. In the space of right to information, which of the following statements is or are correct? It talks about disinformation and misinformation. Well, this was actually, a question which was asked in my interview, my first interview. At that time, I remember a lot of, this RTI and Lokpal and all that drama was going on. Anna Hazare and Ramlila Maidan, all that you remember, I'm sure. The whole anti-corruption movement. And they asked me that what is the difference between disinformation and misinformation? See, it's all in the language. If you just spend little time just thinking about this word dis and mis, you should be able to understand. Anyway, they are just reversed. Just put the meaning in the reverse order. So disinformation is where there is a deliberate spread of false information. Misinformation is just incorrect or misleading information which just happens to be there, but there is no intention perhaps or any malified intention or something like that. That's Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab, a prodigy for this Shehnai. So the last question for this video, we have which of the following statements is or are correct regarding the contempt of court in India. A lot of drama has happened in recent times, so it's always good to re-look at the basic laws, basic provisions, and that's what I say by basic concepts. It's not about easy or difficult. Many people just don't get it. That's why they struggle. When I say basic concept, it does not mean I'm saying it's easy or difficult. It's about focusing on the essential provisions, essential rules which define the system. Everything else, there's no point harping on current affairs. See the question papers. They're always going to first test you on your knowledge of basic rules. Everything else is for mains. Anyhow, so the first statement says the Constitution of India empowers Supreme Court to punish for its contempt. Absolutely correct. We know. Even for High Court it is there in Article 129 for Supreme Court, 142 also there, and 225 for the for the state high courts. Then for the subordinate courts, actually there is it is not mentioned in the constitution, but it is in this act called Contempt of Courts Acts of 1971, and in that it says that the power to punish will lie with the concerned high courts. So subordinate courts are also their court of record partially, except that they don't have the power to punish for their contempt. Anyway, that's Pandit Bhimsen Joshi. I mean, he died recently, a few years back, so I'm sure you would remember that and read a little bit more. And like always, to end this video, today I thought I'll tell you what is called popularly the Peter Principle. And it's a very simple principle, usually discussed and spoken in public administration as well as management areas, that in a hierarchy every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. Very interesting thought. In bureaucracy in India also you can try and think. See, the idea is very simple. An employee works well, then he is rewarded with a promotion. Then the employee works well again in that job, and then it gets another promotion. And this continues until the point the employee is no longer performing at a level deserving of a promotion. So they will not be promoted any further. Which means what? They are left at a level where they overmatch by the demands of the job. They are not able to perform. In other words, they have become incompetent. Anyway, the word principle is too strong here. These are just some thoughts and ideas to understand organizational phenomena. On that note, I'll leave you to it. I'll see you very soon with 10 more questions. Till then, study well. Take care.